and he's joined this week by the Reverend David Ogston.
When you go to the Kirk of St John's in Perth on a Sunday morning, you may be lucky enough to hear the word, preach it in this language, in this voice.
Say nu, we tell the story of his nights and days. Fu he was born for us in a steading, and bedded for the Kai war.
Glory be to you, Christ, the bairn o' Mary.
He was baptized for us in Jordan's water, tested in the desert, and sent the deal hame to think again.
Glory be to you, Christ of the desert.
He made the lame to walk and raised the dead to life. Love was the song he threepit to his own folk and fremmed folk alike.
Glory be to you, Christ o' healing.
He was betrayed for us and sold for siller, ta'en to Pilate, and condemned to Calvary. For us he sold the cross, for us he died.
Glory be to you, Christ of the thorns.
For us he rose again and told his friends that he would aye be with them. For nae door can be shut again him, nae steen smore him.
The word, in the words of my guest, David Ogston. Welcome, David. It's good to meet you at last.
Hello, Billy, fit like.
No bad at all. Now, the first thing anybody hearing you deludes is that you certainly didn't belong Perth. Where exactly in the northeast was you brought up?
I was brought up in a craft, 25 mile out of Aberdeen, about 8 mile for Ellen, and about 12 mile for a village called Achnagat.
You look about ages with me, was it early 50s?
Aye, thanks a lot. I'm 46, and if you think I look as old as you, well, that's not a good sign.
I'm interviewing a minister, and I wanted to ask a minister when they thought of Tom Nairn saying that Scotland would never be free. The last minister was strangled with the last copy of the Sunday Post.
I would change that. I would say Scotland will not be free till the last broadcaster is strangled with the last copy of the Radio Times.
Touché. Was it very much a crofting background? Was it a wee toty place, or was it... How many coos did you have? How many beasts did you have in the fair?
It was fit out a few place, Billy. A few nout, a few sheep, a few pigs, a few acre. It wasn't more than 50 acre. So there wasn't a lot of good living in it. I mean, it was a hard job, but my father had been born on that very place in 1906, and I was born in Ellen 1945, and I spent 11 years in that same place till my folk moved to Canella.
You've written about your boyhood in Buchan in a couple of books, and in there, one of the things that struck me was who close the human beings were to the animals, to the extent that some of the terms that were used to describe the animals was taken on by the human beings.
Aye.
The horses, for example.
This came from the tradition that the language men spoke was so centred on the horse that it was natural for him to start speaking about a car with good tyres as a car being wheel-shod. And you have to realise, Billy, there was a lot of things I had to ask my father. Like there was, this day my mother and my father were speaking about a romance that was happening. And my mother said, "Oh, he's off a Guid till he can. He takes her out here and he takes her out there and he gives her presents." And my father said, "Oh, that's a bad sign. He started corning." And I thought, I didn't understand that. So I had to speak and I said, "What do you mean corning?" And he said, "Oh, well," he said, "that was in the days when you tried to saddle a horse or get up the Guid side of a horse, and you would give them little titbits, and you would give them just handfuls of corn to keep them sweet." And he said, "That's for this Cheers doing with the quine. He's trying to keep her sweet. He's corning."
And you would use to get yoke in the morning, to get lousy in the afternoon.
Aye.
For stopping and starting your work. Interestingly, the miners in Ayrshire, that my grandfather's generation, they would use the same terms, because they used to work with horse down the pit.
Aye.
So they would, even though they were in an industrial setting, they used these agricultural terms, applying horse language to just to get stopping and starting.
There was a lot of plural language used in I mean, there's a great story of a loon at the squeal, and the teacher said to him, "Now, Jimmy, you have to draw a margin at the side of the page. Otherwise, all your writing will be out of place. So this loony takes his ruler and he draws this tremendous margin. You see, it's thick and black. And the teacher says, "Oh, you didn't need to press the pencil into the paper like that, Jimmy." And he said, "Oh, I can, miss," he says, "but I'm a bit like my father. I like to see a good fearing."
And what did he mean by that, for folk that don't have that kind of Scots, good fearing?
He meant a strong line to guide the pluin fae, because the fearing is the first and most important cut into the grun.
That part of the country, wee crofts, lowland area, but with crofts, and yet with big powerful families round about. What was your relationship with the local lairds?
Well, I didn't ken there was any. That's not an answer, but they didn't figure really. What we spoke about, Billy, was there was crafters, there was farmers, and there was big farmers. And I was never sure as a loon what all the differences was. But looking back and trying to be sociological about it now, I suppose we was in the crafter category. Farmers were maybe men with 50 till 150 acre. And in the scale of values I'm speaking about, big farmers was men with 2, 3, 400 acre. And they weren't maybe so common. They weren't so well kent to me in a way.
The likes that in your book you mention an incident where Lord Aberdeen and the local firefighting force give him a horn and end up drinking together in the middle of the night, Lord Aberdeen and the local men. I mean, did that kind of relationship exist, or was that an exaggerated situation? What reputation did the local lairds have, the Aberdeens, for example, had a house?
Well, again, I was our far fate, really, to ken about it, but I ken frae my uncles, and especially the uncle that was the firefighter involved on this famous night. I ken that for his side, there was no problem about standing drinking the laird's whiskey and speaking to them natural, because in fact I think that particular laird was big enough to make men that coming about the place feel natural with him. And the funny thing is, Billy, you know, that it's the folk that have made siller quick and think they're somebody, that think they're lairds. They're difficult to get on with. But the folk that have hid it in the family and have hundreds and hundreds of acre grun and forestry and big houses to bide in, they're not so bothered with it.
But there wasn't only kind of overt class distinctions. The way you get, say, in the southwest, where you've got industrialisation taking place, and folk thinking that we belong to this class, this belongs to this class. We didn't
admit class in terms of social standing. Class to us, I think, was a matter of knowledge. Knowledge was the ladder. Knowledge turned into professions, like it's the old story about the dominie had status in the community because he had this trust invested in him, that you put your bairns to him to get their schooling. And the doctor had status, but it wasn't anything to do with siller. It was to do with knowledge. You trusted the doctor. The minister had status, and of course that was nothing to do with siller, because the minister was more than likely war off than a lot of the folk he was working with. But again, it had to do with the status of a man, and of course I'm speaking about men because there was no women ministers then. It's to do with the status of a man that you trust with your burials, loved ones, the marriage of your young folk, the christening of your bairns. It's about trust and knowledge. Nothing to do with position, status, importance as measured in siller.
I was surprised reading your book that you described going to a kirk and it was almost like an alien experience to you, which surprised me considering you're a minister now. Why was that?
Well, you see, it was alien because we was on this craft 5 mile from New Deer, which was a place far the Kirk was that my folk belonged till. So 5 mile on a Sunday morning wasn't just the first option when you'd all the jobs in the place to do and just the usual things to see till. So I wasn't hardly ever in the Kirk at all when I was little, except when I get to Methlick to bide with my Auntie Nan and Uncle Andrew and my cousin Andy. And then on a Sunday I was camed, washed, polished, turned out in a pair of bricks that didn't have a hole in them, and whack it to the Kirk. And this was totally new and half a formal. I mean, this was strange, really. I mean, him to be so fantouche as that.
And was your memories of that, was it like something for a different world? You described the women with their long frocks on and their long coats on.
It was all fairly to me, Billy. The sight of women looking just shapeless, and usually in black or brown. I mean, if women get to the Kirk in coats that were yellow or even green, there was likely to be something flichtsome about them. So it was a fairly things to look at, and of course it was a great experience to listen to, because the whole service was in a language which was full of portentous words, and words that weren't in the common currency at Elkie Day. So to me, the smell of the place, the polish, the smell of all fusty Bibles, the smell of women's quoits with the moss bars still hanging to them, you'd think, you'd almost imagine the moss bar was still in the collar. The smell of men that had tried to put on a bit of brill cream to look a bit more tidy. It was a new experience.
So where did you get the interest in religion? Where did you get the feel for religion that you've obviously got now?
That was an adolescent thing. That was something to do with being 15 and going to Scripture Union meetings and listening to speakers and beginning to look at the Bible as, again, the same experience as the Methlick Kirk. An experience new to me, but promising. I'd actually heard a bit of the Bible opened up to me by my granny when I was little, because my granny was a very devout Christian buddy, and she would sit me down when I was maybe feeling a bit sorry for myself and try and lift me out of myself with a story, like a story Joseph in his coat. You see the coat with all the colours, or Noah in this big boat he had to put together to get away from the flood. And with not an awful lot of effort, I suppose I can still hear my granny saying, "Fit a big boat this was Noah had to big, and fit a lot of flechs and golichs and out and sheep and giraffes and elephants he had to tack on with him, because he had to tack them all, you see. And if he didn't tack some, they would be drowned. They would be lost forever. So Noah and his 3 sons, Shem and Ham and Japheth. And there was times you ken my granny could be a wee bit mischievous, and she would say, "Now you'll mind Shem and Ham and Japheth?" And I would say, "Aye." "Well," she says, "you'll easy mind, because it's a shame to hide Ham in your jacket." Now, I was amazed, because when my granny spoke about the Bible, she was sometimes nearly solemn, but she would come out with this, you see. It's a shame to hide, a joke, a shame to hide Ham in your jacket. And I think that was awful good for me, Billy, because it brought home to me, not just that the Bible was rich in stories, but that you could be human about it, and you could, sit back for the story and make a joke about hiding Ham in your jacket. But the other thing was the identification. Noah's Ark was more interesting to me when I heard that there wasn't just giraffes or elephants and antelopes and creepy crawlies on it, but when I heard that there was nought on the Ark, well, I mean, there was no doubt about it. Noah was a man of Buchan, just like my father.
Of course. And do you think that habeliness of the language, is that something in the Scots language that attracts you to preach now and again in it yourself?
There's only anything wrong with that question, and that is that you're begging a question. You're begging a question, if I may say so, that preaching's a hamely activity. And there's times when preaching's nae about hamely things, but preaching's about the stern things, the sterk things. But certainly, I find in all the things that I write, now this could be a sermon, or it could be a poem, or I could be trying to write something for a book. In all the things I write, there is this tension, there has to be this tension between the heart and the heed and the horn. And it's out of this tension that writing and speaking comes. Your heart tells you a thing. Your heed corrects that a bit, or it says, well, see it from another angle. And then the horn comes into it when you ging into the darg, a pitting it down. And I'm yon funny folk, Billy, that I'm nae off a good way experience. I'm nae off a good way experience till I've written it down. And then I begin to see the sense of it. And there's many a time I've said to myself, I canna cope with this, I canna describe this, I canna come to terms with this till I've written it, and then I've read it, and the process has happened whereby the heart and the heed and the hand have all joined forces.
And you have heard tell that when you do preach, quite often you'll no read, you'll talk to your congregation. Is there no a danger there that you can get carried away just with words and with the sound of the voice and the power of the voice?
Aye.
Is that a thing you enjoy, that power?
It can be exciting. It can be disastrous. Norman Mailer, the American writer, has a line or two somewhere about the difference between reading a prepared text, which, with the best will in the world, files, you can really get so bored reading a prepared text that not just your listeners are fed up, but you're fed up with it now. The difference between reading a prepared text and Mailer uses the phrase, trusting yourself to the grace of the moment. Now there you can really experience an event that tacks off and takes wing. But you can, of course, experience the other thing, which is that you land yourself in a dead end that you didn't ken. And you're in a burach and you have to get out of it some way. So it's a risk, and I wouldn't advise it. And I try to look hard at myself to stop myself doing it. But when it works, and it works well, it's great.
What is it? What's the main difference when you use the King James version of the Bible and say the Lorimer version?
The main difference is the tone of voice. It's as simple as that. The language is different, obviously, but you take that for granted. What you dinna really take on board until you've done it is that you read the Lorimer, which is the Scots, with a colour and an immediacy and a flavour or a fervour which you canna use with the King James, for the simple reason that all your life you've heard other folk reading the King James, and their influences come into your mind that somehow the King James has to be treated with gloves on. But the Lorimer, it's bare hand stuff, and it's real stuff, and it's
If you get back to your Crofton background away and being yourself.
Well, it's the combination of the heart and the heed in a happy kind of yoking, and they yoke together, you see, and that's the difference.
Have you any favourite bits yourself for the Lorimer translation?
More than some, so I would hate to select a bit, and this is the bit I would pick out of the Lorimer, or any of them, anyway. It's the story about Jesus being in the boat, and they were arguing over the loch, and a storm blasts up, and they're all feared, and they think they're sinking, and they think the boat's doomed, and they say to him, are you nae going to do something? Because we're all in danger. And Christ stands up and he speaks to the wind and the waves and he says, "Wheesht ye, be quiet," which is superb. It's just the tone of voice. It's just the phrase that somebody would use to a bairn that was bleeping in the corner. Be quiet, wheesht. And I think that's marvellous. Lorimer has suggested that Christ's relationship to the storm was father to child. Okay? And there's another great story where he tells a parable about a wifey that Esther's a judge and winna let him be, and she deaves him, and the judge gets fed up. Until the judge says, "I'll hate to do something about this wifey, or if I dinna, she'll come and give me 12 blue een." And you read this in the Lorimer and you think, oh, that's nae the way the English put it. That's nae in the Bible. That's nae in the Bible I ken, anyway. So you go back to the English and you read it, and the English says that the judge eventually comes out with, "I will have to give this woman justice or she will wear me out." So you're still left asking, Billy, far does Lorimer get his 12 blue een? So I'm maybe a wee bit lucky here because I did Greek at the school and at the university. And there was this day I get back to the Greek, which is as far back as you can gang. And I read the Greek, and of course there was the secret. The word in Greek, hupopiazo, is the word that Lorimer translates as giving somebody 12 black een, 12 blue een. But it also means to wear out or to annoy or to pester. So
the Scots is truer to the Greek than the English translation is.
I think the great thing about the Scots there is that Lorimer opts for the phrase with colour in it, and he seems to be good at this visual thing, and I think that's maybe a Scots language characteristic, to make the language as vivid and as brecht as you can.
Is it possible though to have the gravitas that the English King James version has in the Scots? Is that a register that's been lost to the Scots, or can you do it?
No, you can do it. The reason why you can do it is the Gospels is far Jesus is in fact doing fit you and me are doing. Folk newsing speaking. And it's really quite quick stuff. It's nae as if I think Jesus says is a speech. There's times when Jesus himself throws in a touch of humour or just a comment about something happening. It's quick and it's gone. Far the gravity and the weight comes in is when Lorimer translates the letters of Paul, and of course there we're into some guy heavy theology, but Lorimer proves, which is of course the point of the whole exercise, that the Scots can carry the quick and immediate conversational thing, and it can carry the argument, the discussion, the involved kind of stuff as well.
You've had a go at writing your cell services for the Kirk. Was that an exercise just off your own bat? Did you set out to do it yourself, that? Like the wedding ceremony, for example?
Part of it was me getting to the point where I was asking myself, fit why nae, which is as good a starting point as any. Fit why nae, let's try it, let's have some fun here. The wedding service actually came for a couple that speared for themselves, and it wasn't in my head at all to do the wedding service. And you can fit why nae, go and spear.
Fit why nae, to use your language.
Because I couldn't. Fit kind of a job it would be to turn the whole thing into Scots. And what I mean there is, when you're turning something into Scots, you have to strike the balance so that the whole thing soons at home with itself. Does that make any sense to you?
I ken what you're ettling at, but it must be a gay difficult thing to do.
Well, you're just aiming to strike the same note all the way through. That's what I mean. And that requires a lot of concentration. It requires a lot of standing back and measuring the soon, measuring the sense against the soon. Because as you can find, the easiest thing in the world is to let yourself go too much, and then you're into realms of overblown language. And you have to, being a Scots exercise, you have to try and keep the words real, sharp, fresh, words with an edge to them. So it did take me a fairly bit. This couple, Michael and Aileen Camtels, and they said, we'd like it in Scots, and it was a great challenge, and it was a great pleasure to try indeed. This is what I came up with. I had to change a thing, of course.
Would you let us hear a bit of it?
Aye, I had to change the vows, so I had Aileen saying to Michael, I, Aileen, take you, Michael, to be my wedded husband. I pledge you in the sight of God, and all the folk that's here, my sair and ardent love. I promise I will hud to you and look after you at all times. We laugh or in want, dwining or hail in fear, till death louses me. This is my soothfast word to you. There again, Billy, the word louses comes in. Just what we were speaking about for the horse days. Death in this instance being the end of the day. The idea you're taking off the harness of life and work and all the struggle, and you're going to want to hear asleep.
It's got intimacy and it's got that homely touch to it, but there's one of my favourite lines for it is the line, and will you mark her your peerless quine? And the word, the sounds of peerless quine, to me has resonances, the markers in the Middle Ages and the higher register. So you've managed to get a mel of the homely, I think, and the higher register, which I think would the couple that was getting married would enjoy. It's a serious thing that's going on, and yet it's intimate at the same time. David Ogston, that was bro. Thanks very much for coming on the programme. And to everybody at home, thanks for listening. May joy be with you all.
And he's joined this week